Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just listening to some of the debate, I did want to remind members, there was a question raised, what are the some of the specifics of this bill that are positives? And there's a pretty long list. The retirement age is increased. The final average salary calculation is broadened from 3 to 5 years. The multiplier on the defined benefit is reduced significantly down to 1 or 1.25, depending on what choice is made. There's a significant risk shift. Of course, with every dollar going into the defined contribution plan, that's 100% risk shift for that dollar. The IFO said that after doing an analysis of declines in the stock market, say 1% or 2% off of the assumed rate of returns the systems use, that this plan is going to improve our liabilities by 53% in terms of risk of increased costs for one system, and for the other 58%. That's very significant. The bill also tells CSRS that they have to do what is standard now across the country on calculating the normal cost. Someone said on the floor this doesn't do anything to the unfunded liability. The IFO differs. They calculate a $4 billion reduction in the unfunded liability as a result of these changes. In addition to that, the plan saves taxpayers $1.5 billion. And there's an increase in the shared loss component for future hires, so that if there's a downturn in the market, there'll be more on the employees in that situation. So the bill does a great deal. I have a couple of concluding remarks, but before I do that, I've worked quite a lot on this with a number of individuals. I'd like to start by acknowledging the involvement of our speaker. He was deeply engaged in this over a number of years with me. The representative from Chester County who retired, Representative Ross, was very involved. The representative from Schuylkill County, chairman of the State Government Committee from Butler, our leader and his staff were deeply involved in this process, especially this time around. The State Government Committee members and their staff, the minority leaders and their staff, although we didn't always agree, there certainly was a great deal of involvement and work on their part. Our staff, who have worked on this issue for a while, a great deal, the actuaries and the system staff, all of those are a part of the product that is before you for a vote today, up or down, and I would like to personally thank them. Okay, pensions generally don't yield great floor speeches, right? I mean, actuarial reports and that sort of thing, you can't really get soaring rhetoric out of that. But I think probably because I've been so deeply involved in it, I'm going to give it a try. As legislators, we come here to make a difference. I got into this issue because I wanted to make positive change for Pennsylvania on this issue. Oftentimes when we do that, it's because of a constituent who comes to us or something that we know about in our lives. We try to change the code or the bills, and we try to make the law a little bit better for the citizens of Pennsylvania. But we don't do that in the situation of some kind of a tragedy or a terrible crisis. Legislatures, however, do react to crises all over the country. Think about what we've been doing here with respect to the opioid crisis. Several years ago, the revelations about what happened at Penn State with Sandusky moved us to very significant action. Well, I don't think it is too crazy a comparison to those sorts of human tragedies to the tragedy that we are faced with today with this pension system. And this legislation is a response to that tragedy. It is the legislature and the governor, if he signs this, responding to a tragedy that all Pennsylvanians are dealing with. That tragedy is reflected in the fact that 10% of the state budget this year, and for as far as the eye can see, that is going to be the case. 10% of the state budget is going to our annual contribution. That amounts to $3 billion. That's nearly a third of the income tax collections of the state of Pennsylvania, nearly a third of the sales tax collections. That is a tragedy. And by my rough calculations, if the mistakes had been made, or if the mistakes had not been made with this current system, we would be paying less than a third of that annually. That would mean that we would have $2 billion more this year available to us. I dare say the bill that we worked on yesterday at such great length would not even have been necessary. Some in this chamber would want us to take that $2 billion, if they had their wish, and return it to the taxpayers because it wasn't needed. Or the many, many entities and groups and individuals that have come to us and said, please just hold the line on my budget item, or restore those dollars that were taken out in this or that proposal before the House for the appropriations bill. We would be able to say yes to them. But because of the tragedy of this system and the mistakes that have been made with it, we cannot do that. And the people who elect us expect, when some kind of serious tragedy occurs, that we will at least change the law so that we attempt to reduce the chances that that will ever happen again. We can't eliminate those. We're all human beings. But the people of Pennsylvania expect us, when we come here, to see tragedy and to do whatever we can to reduce it from ever happening again. This bill creates a defined contribution plan that is mandatory for all future hires. It is historic legislation, not only here in Pennsylvania, but all across the country. And someday, if we build on the foundation that is created by this bill and create a more robust DC plan for our employees, I believe that 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, there will be people who say, thank God that the people back in 2017 in the House and the Senate and in the governor's mansion had the sense to respond to what they were going through. People talk about a risk shift. This is a risk shift. What is the risk? The risk is that the thing that is happening to us and all of the people of Pennsylvania right now will happen in the future. And if we can vote on a bill that reduces the risk that those people will be in the situation we find ourselves, then my God, we ought to do it. This bill is an opportunity for each and every one of you to say you see the tragedy we are facing and you are willing to respond to it. It is a good benefit for our future employees, unquestionably competitive with everything in the private sector, and it promises to reduce the risk that we will never, as a state, be in this situation again. I'm thrilled to be able to cast this vote. I'm glad to have participated in this process over what is now 7 years, and I think this is excellent work. Please vote for it for our future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.